The gate opens. 80,000 people are already screaming, and you haven't moved yet. The sand beneath your feet is still dark from the last fight. Not from dirt, from blood that hasn't fully dried. The noise is physical. It presses against your chest like something alive. You can feel it in your teeth. Not everyone who entered this arena had a chance. Some were trained. Some had survived before. Others walked through that gate with no weapon, no training, and no hope. And others faced something worse than any human opponent. The Colosseum was not a stadium. It was a machine built to control crowds, project imperial power, and demonstrate publicly that in Rome, life itself could be granted or taken on command. At its height, it held between 50 and 80,000 people. Senators at the front, merchants and soldiers in the middle, women and slaves pressed into the upper rows. All of them there for the same reason: to watch Rome demonstrate what it could do. Beneath the arena floor was a structure called the Hypogeum. 32 animal elevators, 80 trapdoors, a labyrinth of tunnels and cages stretching the entire footprint of the building. Lions from North Africa, leopards from the Middle East, bears from Germania, all waiting in darkness, deliberately starved for days to maximize aggression, held on mechanical platforms operated by slaves below. When the mechanism released, the cage rose, the trapdoor opened, and an animal that had been in darkness for days exploded into blinding sunlight and 80,000 screaming people. What happened next depended entirely on who you were. You were classified as damnati ad bestias, condemned to the beasts. No weapon, no armor, no training. In some cases, tied to a post so you couldn't run. Your death was scheduled between meals. The morning executions filled the gap between the beast hunts and the gladiatorial combat of the afternoon, while the crowd ate lunch. Some executions were staged as mythological theater. A prisoner, cast as Orpheus, was dressed in costume and sent into the arena believing he was performing a reenactment. The ending was not theatrical. A man playing Mucius Scaevola, the Roman hero who held his hand in fire without flinching, had his hand actually burned. Rome did not simply execute criminals. It turned execution into narrative, into a demonstration that Roman law was so absolute it could choreograph your death for an audience. Your survival odds? 0. This was not a contest. It was a sentence carried out publicly for maximum psychological effect. The Venatores occupied a strange middle ground. Trained fighters who specialized in killing exotic animals using spears, bows, and short swords. Some were slaves, some were volunteers drawn by fame and money. The scale of what they faced was staggering. The inauguration games of the Colosseum in 80 AD lasted 100 consecutive days. During those 100 days, an estimated 9,000 animals were killed. 90 animals per day, every day, for over 3 months. Rome sent hunting expeditions deep into Africa, the Middle East, and Asia to supply its arenas. Entire species were depleted. The North African elephant, the Mesopotamian lion, the European brown bear, all pushed toward regional extinction by Rome's appetite for spectacle. Every animal you faced had been deliberately captured, transported thousands of miles, starved, kept in darkness, and released directly toward you in front of 80,000 people. Your survival depended on training and weapon. A skilled hunter with a spear against a single lion had reasonable odds. A less experienced fighter against a bear in open sand did not. And sometimes the games required you to face more than one. Here is what popular culture consistently gets wrong. Gladiators were not slaves thrown into hopeless slaughter. They were expensive investments. Training took years. The schools fed them carefully, treated their injuries, and matched them strategically. A gladiator who died in his first fight was a financial loss. A gladiator who kept winning became famous, and famous gladiators filled seats. There was a gladiator named Flamma, who fought 34 times. He won 21 fights. 4 times he was defeated, but spared. 4 times he was offered his freedom, the wooden sword presented as a formal discharge. 4 times he refused it. He re-enlisted voluntarily. Because a famous gladiator in Rome was a celebrity with income and identity that civilian life couldn't replace. Archaeological analysis of gladiator skeletons from a burial site in Ephesus shows healed wounds consistent with multiple combats. One skeleton showed 3 square puncture wounds to the skull, matching the spacing of a studded arm guard used to finish downed opponents. These men were being killed by practiced, specific techniques. The arena was not chaos, it was a grammar of violence, with rules and defined outcomes. But even a skilled gladiator faced something no training could prepare for: the crowd. When a fighter went down, the editor of the games, sometimes the emperor himself, looked to the crowd. The crowd shouted, "Mitte," "let him go," or demanded death. And the emperor was performing for them as much as the gladiators were. A gladiator could win brilliantly and still die if the politics of the moment made his death more valuable than his survival. You were fighting your opponent, but also 50,000 people, and the one man in the marble box who could end you with a gesture. All 3 of those people had one thing in common: they were part of a system that had nothing to do with fairness. Rome's arena games were political instruments. Emperors who funded the most spectacular games were buying loyalty, managing public anger, redirecting the attention of a city of 1 million people towards sand and blood, and away from the system controlling them. Panem et circenses, bread and circuses. Julius Caesar staged games involving 600 gladiators. Augustus recorded that 10,000 gladiators fought across his reign. Trajan's victory celebrations lasted 123 days. The Colosseum was propaganda built from stone. Every death reminded Rome's citizens what their empire could do. It could dominate enemies. It could dominate nature. It could dominate people, publicly, elaborately, and without apology. Could you survive the Roman Colosseum? If you were condemned, no. The system was designed so that you couldn't. If you were a beast hunter, maybe, with training, weapon, and the discipline to keep moving when everything in you wanted to freeze. If you were a gladiator, possibly, for as long as you kept winning, kept performing, kept giving the crowd what they came for. But here is the honest answer. Survival was never purely yours to decide. It was granted by a crowd, by an emperor, by a civilization that had built the most sophisticated entertainment machine in history and filled it every day with the one resource it never seemed to run short of: people willing to watch. Rome's Colosseum closed in the 6th century. The last games were held around 435 AD. Within 100 years, the structure was being used as a quarry, its marble stripped, its iron melted down, its sand long gone. But the need it served never disappeared. The desire to watch other people's fear, suffering, and survival as entertainment, that didn't end with Rome. It just changed shape. Every era finds its own version of the arena. The only question worth asking is which side of the gate you're on.